Afternoon, folks. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. This is on the back of a couple of days at BET last week, and then it's been the UCIDA Leadership Conference this week. So I spent yesterday there, and it was nice and busy. And this presentation is really just one that we replay quite often because it's just such a big topic. I hear so many terms like we are post-COVID teaching and learning, all of those types of terms. And what we really want to do is just try and bring some of the structure to some of the conversations that we see with customers on a regular basis. So without further ado, we've got a 6-part agenda to rattle through. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to set the scene. We're going to look at a little bit of what we've seen around hybrid learning, around digital classrooms, learning spaces, and then data and AI, and then something around envisioning of what's coming next with some of the things that we're working on. So without further ado, I've read, firstly, thanks to the guys for opening up the chat. So one of the things I was able to do prior was just read some of the chat that's been going around today, and some of the different elements of that. If you're interested, we've released our own sort of class of 2030 paper, which is available at the URL on the bottom left-hand slide, left-hand corner of the slide. So aka.ms/class of 2030, class of 2030. And in essence, it's a piece of work that has been global. So we try to bring some global views of the trends that you will typically be aware of and the things that you will know about, but certainly bringing a Microsoft lens to that, looking through, with companies like LinkedIn and out into employability. So please have a look at that. If you want to have a look now and ask questions at the end, feel free to do so. One of the biggest questions I often get asked is Microsoft in education for the long haul, or is this just something that we feel we have to do? This is the longest job I've had at Microsoft. I've been in the education team for 4 years now. And I think without fail, what you will see in the education team around the globe is a passion. And it is a passion for driving the right outcomes for students. It's a passion for driving the right amount of technology and for helping teachers, tutors, lecturers have the right experience with learning technology. So our North Star is this thing called the Education Transformation Framework. And typically what we do is we center around student success. We center around teaching and learning. Very important at the moment, secure and connected campus, and then academic research. Stepping through, we take some of the findings that we pick up speaking to customers, speaking to industry analysts and sector experts. And we've seen some pretty unprecedented times as we've seen. But for me, in the education team here, I have seen so much positive outcome. I've seen people achieve things that they never thought they would achieve. I've seen change happen at a pace that people just didn't think was possible, and some really amazing outcomes. And the interesting thing is that the output of this is influencing the top technology trends. So for instance, we talk about digital credentials. So I'm doing a piece of work with the DFE around a credential for life, as are many other vendors as well. So for instance, you start school on the first day, and you keep that credential with you throughout your entire education life and then out into employment. One of the areas that we get pulled into very heavily if we want to drive a successful student outcome is analytics. So interventions at the right time, and those interventions being the right ones to positively impact the student journey and the student outcome. One of the things that you'll hear from us more and more throughout 2022 is a word called mesh. And mesh is part of our metasphere, metaverse type of strategy. So this immersive teaching and learning, very deep teaching and learning type of experience. We are doing a ton of work around student information systems as well. So how do we connect to those? How do we make best value of the data that's in them? And then last but not least, a number of the universities, quite a few in fact, have deployed these things called conversational chatbots. Now, if we look at this, and if we go back to the brief of this session, you might say, Ian, how does this really deliver the type of experience that we want to deliver for a student? And I think just taking a little while to see what we've seen evolve is throughout the last 2 and a bit years, what we've really done, and I hear different figures, is that we've either accelerated 5, 10, 2, 7 years worth of digital transformation in an incredibly short space of time. And one of the things that I always try and do when I'm asked to do these sessions is pause for 30 seconds and really acknowledge the phenomenal effort that everyone made, continues to make, and the really deep impact that we all had on keeping this absolutely vital sector alive. And I think we shouldn't underestimate what we've actually achieved. You know, I've sat down with a group of lecturers who've told me that they feel as though they've got PTSD because they're so exhausted and they've been through such transformational change. But the fact is, together, a lot of students are achieving a lot of success because of all of the effort that we collectively put in. So I think that's something we should be incredibly proud of. What does it give us moving forward? Well, hybrid learning is clearly here to stay, whether it's from the university that is saying we want all students back on campus, whether it's from the university that's saying, do you know what, we're in the middle of a city, buildings are terribly expensive. One thing this has given us is the ability to go and get new students from new areas and mitigate the building of new buildings and effectively grow our online presence. And then to complement that, over on the right-hand side, the data and AI element, where we're literally bringing in data from different sources, helping academics, helping institutional leaderships understand the journey that the student is going on or has been on, and really starting to pull those vital data sets into that analytical side of that journey. The other area that has just grown massively, and I think would have grown a lot faster without the chip shortage, is digital classrooms. We've seen some phenomenal work around the way in which Teams is used to deliver teaching and learning. To give you an idea, when we entered the pandemic, we were tracking at just about 6 figures of Teams monthly active users in the customers that I look after. At the height of the pandemic across education, we were peaking at around 4.6 million monthly active users, which is just incredible. It's incredible on so many fronts, because if you think about an underlying piece of technology which was designed to deliver audio and video and collaboration, and then was suddenly elevated into the limelight of being a teaching and learning platform, that's a pretty significant evolution of a product that was only launched 5 years ago. I remember walking down the driveway, talking to someone at a Southwest university, and that person was saying to me, Ian, we've literally got 11 days to deploy 17 to 17,000 users. And that university did it, and it was a phenomenal success. And I think it's one of the stories that I get to hear about, and then I'm able to really North Star on that story because I hear it so many times. So many universities deployed quickly, they trained staff quickly, students downloaded the mobile phone app quickly, and effectively we started to underpin really what was happening at that time. But moving forward, one of the things that I get really passionate about is staff welfare. And so what we've started to do is bring an employee experience platform to life called Viva. Again, I hear you say, Ian, why on earth does this impact the student journey? Well, to me, if you've got academics, which are clearly vibrant and experts in their topic, deliver great educational content, we have to make sure that we're safeguarding their well-being. So one of the things that I get involved in now is a much deeper focus on staff welfare as well, and how we can ensure that the academics are comfortable with the technology, that they're not living in fear of the technology, and effectively they're still delivering the richness that they've always delivered, but in this ever-changing environment. Now, getting back to what does a good teaching and learning experience look like? We obviously center around Microsoft products because of the Microsoft 365 suite, and you guys have a ton of entitlement to these products, and we're going to start to unpack some of this now. So in essence, if we think about the hybrid model, and I'm going to stick with that term if you don't mind, because we talk about synchronous and asynchronous as different types of teaching delivery, pedagogical delivery. If we then start to look at the technology that underpins it, I feel that my role in life with the education sector is to make sure that everyone is happy with that layer. And by that layer, I mean the technology which helps you be successful and drive those student outcomes. So in essence, if we look at some of the products that we've got in the conversation area, products like Outlook, sending email, like Yammer, building communities and fostering and nurturing conversations. Ian, why mention Yammer when you've got Teams? Well, Yammer is very much a business-wide, an institutional-wide application which can bring those really wide communities together. I call it the veneer of communication. It's a communication that you want to be quite thin, but it has to go out to a lot of people in one go. So it's a great platform for executing that. If we then come across to files and to content, we start to talk about the Office suite. The Office suite was never designed as an educational package, granted, but where do students go when they leave university? They go out into the working world, and there's a probability they're going to use us, they're going to use Google, they're going to use Workspace. But effectively, they're building up the skills by using these applications that help them become prepared for that employment. We're seeing a lot happening around Stream, as we all know. So Stream is going through a rework. We're losing a couple of features in the short term, but we're gaining a lot of features in the midterm and the long term. And for me, that is really going to start to deliver an amazing asynchronous type of delivery platform, where you can upload content, have it captioned immediately, and then distribute it out to audiences, to students. We are working heavily on the analytics side of that platform as well, so that you can see all of the analytics that you would expect to see from that type of video platform as well. Now, all of these run on something, so documents are stored somewhere, and you've got SharePoint and you've got OneDrive. Very clear delineation here, demarcation. You've got OneDrive for personal, and you've got SharePoint for everything else. If we then come across to notes and to content, I hear and see some amazing stories about lecturers using OneNote as the basis for course content. Over at Aberystwyth, I was lucky enough to meet a sports lecturer who has delivered her entire course and actually uses a crossword as the way of unlocking the next module. So for instance, if it's module 1 and you've gone down the left-hand side of OneNote and you've laid out all the different modules, module 1, module 2, module 3, 4, 5, and 6, but you don't necessarily want students to go flying ahead and looking into the future modules. What she's done in a brilliant way is just use a crossword. And when you've done the crossword, which by the way is a result of all of the content of the first module, then effectively you unlock the key to the second module and progress through that way with OneNote at the core. I then get drawn into a topic which I must emphasize is my view. It's not the view of Microsoft, just for the clarity of the recording. I'm a real OneNote fan, and I'm I would say my jury is out about whiteboard. And the reason is because in OneNote, you've got a canvas which is as big as you need it to be, as many pages as you need it to be, some really rich, amazing accessibility tools built in. And for me, it's a very polished product for help building that whiteboard space where everyone can draw, collaborate, drop notes, post-it, stickies, whatever needs to be done. My jury is personally out about whiteboard. I think we've got a lot of work to do in that area to bring it up to what the sector expects. So that's why you'll always hear me come off the fence and wax lyrical about OneNote. If we then move across and look at lectures, then, absolutely stream. We've mentioned whiteboard, OneNote and forms. Forms inside Teams is amazing now, and it is moving forward at a great pace of knots. So being able to branch out into different sub-question routines and being able to collate the answers and analyze the answers and have those answers appear on a popularity board so you can know which terms are most popular. We're starting to really build some nice features into that. So we're sort of 4 parts in now. We've done conversations where we're bringing students together and staff together and lecturers. We've got files, so we know that everything is safe and stored well, especially in these new cyber times. We've already mentioned OneNote. We've talked about lectures. We then come on to assignments. And the assignments modules in Teams and in the Microsoft portfolio, again, continue to go from strength to strength with the feedback that we get from you, from the sector, from people around the world. So being able to automatically assign modules out to students, have them marked, put a rubric around it, and then have those delivered back, really is a piece of functionality that I think we'll start to see come into its own over the next couple of years. Moving over to recordings, we've already spoken about Stream, lots of rich stuff coming along the roadmap. And then what I would describe as probably the most exciting area is apps. If we think about our role, if we think about Microsoft's role as a technology deliverer, it's really our, I would say we're custodians. We're custodians of giving the sector the right technology and the right ability to integrate. So, up here in the top left, we've got all of the Microsoft products which are used to create content and then store it and deliver it out. We then start to talk about Viva, which is employee experience, so keeping staff safe. But for me, the exciting element is all of the relationships that we continue to build on a daily basis with the third-party application providers. Now, this is what I would describe as the Marmite moment of the conversation, because sometimes the institutions love me for saying this and sometimes they hate me. Because in essence, what we're trying to do is keep a really tight cost control. We want to deliver the best value that we can with the M365 suite. But on occasions, there are going to be times when, you might need a bespoke app, which is out in the marketplace. So we effectively bring that ability to integrate it nicely and neatly into Teams, so that when someone is using Teams, they don't have to re-authenticate. I sat down with a university at BET last week who have to authenticate 6 times to 6 different applications. That's not a good experience for anyone. It's stress for the students, it's stress for the lecturer, and it's overhead for IT as well. So, we really see ourselves as custodians of driving that experience. Through the middle, we've got the Teams apps. We've got the Teams functionality, which I think we've done on a few sector-wide calls. So I'm going to shimmy across to the right now and go up. So down in the bottom corner, we are seeing phenomenal use of our Azure cloud, which is in essence our software as a service cloud. And in particular, that's around things like virtual machines for lab environments. It's around things like CRM packages where we want to bring that measurement of the student journey into a platform. On a personal note, and this isn't in any way throwing anyone under a bus, but my wife is doing an MSc in ecology, and she was looking at another course to take on. And she filled out all of the prospective student questionnaire. It went into a system, and she wasn't called back. And that's just quite sad because, you know, every student is worth a significant amount of money. And I think it's an area where collectively we can just start to refine that piece off a bit. And I know many of you are doing that anyway as institutions. If we look at what we've done around LinkedIn Learning continues to go from strength to strength with all of the tools that really help students evolve and develop the soft skills that they're going to use once they morph into employment. And I use the word morph instead of move because to me, you never really leave education. You know, you always go back and do something or take another course or move on and build another qualification. So effectively for me, you morph into employment and then start to grow and develop even further. And then in the top, I'm going to go right to the top corner now. I'm incredibly pleased to see the conversations that we have going with the VLE vendors. Admittedly, they're taking a bit longer than we want them to, but we are working so heavily on LTI integrations so that, yes, Teams can be that UI and that UX, but that's not the only option. One of the things that I learned when I came into education was all around choice. And as much as we wanted to push Teams to be the UI and the UX, we had to be mindful and respectful of the VLE that had been there for many years and was probably the primary UX for a significant portion of that time. So with our LTI integrations, it's a zero friction choice. You can either have Teams meetings landed in the VLE platform, or you can have them landed in the Teams client itself. So if I pause and think about the mantra of this session, we've spoken about, for me, staff wellbeing, which is absolutely vital. We've had 2 years of fast pace. We've spoken about the applications that Microsoft deliver that really open out that opportunity for being prepared to get employed and morph into employment, as we've spoken about. And then for me, it's this slide, which I hope proves that we want to continue to build strong relationships with other vendors in the sector, like Blackboard, like Canvas, like Moodle, as well as the application providers, and bring that richness to life. The next piece for me is quite an interesting topic. You know, if I think about Teams offering audio and video, and then the phenomenal success which Zoom have enjoyed with us around positioning their platform for teaching and learning and for institutions, then one of the things that we've worked on is really to bring Zoom inside Teams. So again, if there are particular niche reasons, whether it's the quality of the audio for dance classes, for music classes, whether it's just the experience or familiarity, then in essence, you can now start a Zoom call from inside Teams, as you can with WebEx as well. If we then come across to the right-hand side of this slide, then lots of work with Moodle and with Blackboard, as we've said, and that will continue as it will with D2L, as it will with all of the other VLE vendors. This is a real passionate area for me, and I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this because one of the things that I think creates the benchmark is the quality of audio. So if we think about the accuracy of transcription, the accuracy of translation, the experience of a student that is remote, then for me, audio is the lowest common denominator. If I think about a lecturer at the front of a lecture hall moving around, it doesn't matter if that lecturer's movement is half a second, 3/4 of a second delayed. But what is absolutely paramount is the quality of the audio, because so much relies on that experience. Because of the growth of Teams in the early days, we made some changes to the audio in Teams, and I do a lot of work with universities just helping them tweak the audio setup so that we do get that rich experience. But again, coming down to some of the work that I've seen with people that are talking about high flex type of deployments to facilitate hybrid learning, then effectively it's really the model on this slide. You know, it's really good quality microphones, high definition cameras which can zoom in, speakers, which obviously provide that audio capture, and then coming over to the right-hand side, the devices and the control equipment, as I would call it, to really drive that experience. You'll see over here, this is actually taken from a setup in the UK from one of the universities, where they do have this large monitor at the front, and the monitor is effectively everyone that is attending remotely. So when the lecturer is standing here, the lecturer has a natural field of vision, which they're used to. They're looking around the lecture hall, they're looking around and seeing the familiar faces, albeit half of the faces are on screen and half of the faces are in the actual space itself. So huge focus for me. This is where I throw out an absolute plea. If you're delivering a lecture just using your laptop, I think you're perfectly entitled to ask for a device, whether it's something like this, whether it's the little jab of puck, whether it's the headset that I'm testing at the moment. But in essence, that will really help with audio, and it just drives that natural experience much better. If we then move on to how things have morphed and evolved, then we've seen some tremendous work done in the UK around different types of classroom layouts, so discussion layouts, small classrooms, teaching and learning from home, and then what we would call the analog content capture. So where someone is very familiar with that good old whiteboard, which is so much fun to use, why get rid of it? Because we can absolutely integrate that. So what we then come on to is really something around Teams rooms. And this picture is taken from the University of Florida, where they effectively rolled out Teams very quickly. You can see by some of the cables here that, yeah, we got the job done and we got the new technology in play. And the reason why they wanted to is because they wanted to use the little console boxes that are at the front of the room, so the little Teams room platform. And the reason why they wanted to do that is that we have some different layouts. So effectively, if we think about students sitting in the room, and if we think about the height of that monitor, you'll notice that that monitor, the bottom of it is just about eye level. So it might be a little bit too high, it could probably come down a little bit, but it's sort of governed by this infrastructure here. Because what's really important is that we're starting to deliver things like front row. And front row is the ability to have the video at the bottom. So, if you think about looking around the room at eye level, then it keeps everyone at eye level. And if you just want to elevate eyes, then effectively it brings the content into play. Another exciting thing, I forgot to mention, vitally important, you can absolutely start Zoom and WebEx meetings from Microsoft Teams rooms as well. Focusing on the integration of content, then on the left-hand side we've got the Microsoft whiteboard, which is running on a Surface device, and we've then got the integration of that video on that piece as well. So having delivered all of this richness around the technology, we then start to build out the analytics side. And this is where we start to bring in the analytics of Teams and the analytics from other applications and build out the dashboards, which really help us provide feedback about how students are engaging with each other, engaging with the content, and then effectively divide those insights across educators and students and leaders. So in essence, if I summarized and closed with the amazing 1-minute alarm bell, there's been a ton of work done across the sector, which has really helped us stay alive as a sector and certainly develop and grow. The focus for me now is really helping refine the use of the tools that you have available. And we do workshops with universities. And then moving forward, it's this piece. It's how do we start to make the most of the analytics, which really help us drive and monitor that engagement at all levels of management. So with that, I'm going to bring it to a close and say once again, thank you for the opportunity to come and present this afternoon. Michael, back to you.
Well, I would like to say a huge thank you to you, Ian. I thoroughly enjoyed that presentation and scribbled loads of notes, as I always do when I hear updates from Microsoft Education. So thank you very much for your presentation. Lots to think about, lots to talk about. I'd like to open up the opportunity for Q&A to our room. We have a few minutes available where you can ask Ian and grill him and challenge him on any elements of his presentation that you would like to hear further on. So please do use either the hand up function in Teams or the chat window, and we'll see what comes up.
I'll pick up on Jed's one. Michael, thank you for the feedback, Jed. Next generation information systems, I think I would describe it as the swan. You know, an SIS is a platform which needs a chunk of integration work. And what we're now working on is how we can make integration with information system platforms much easier, so that there's less time spent on integration, there's less time on that complex under the water activity, and it becomes much more of a plug and play type of approach. It's a mid to long term aspiration, but we're already seeing the benefits with the LTI integrations of the VLEs. But Jed, thanks for raising, appreciate it.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, please do feel free to drop them into the chat.
Christopher, I'm going to call you out. I have to say your guys were amazing at UCISA yesterday. So Nick, and yeah, I agree with you. Mind-blowing, starting a Zoom call from in Teams. Woo! But yeah, it's done and it's working and it works well. So thank you for flagging that as well. Appreciate it.
So we have had a question come in from Lynn around assessment plans for teams.
Oh, Lynn, where's that? There we go. Good. Have I got my... See how quickly I can do this. No, it's not going to do it. If we look at the assessments and the assignments piece, then it's certainly something that I can run a follow-up session on. And Michael, if you want to be the custodian of making that happen, we can do that, because it takes about 90 minutes to go through. Because what we do is we show effectively how you can import the assignment, how you can allocate it out to students, how you can make it time bound, how you can then lock the assessment so that, you know, it can't be submitted after time, or it can be, you know, you might allow submission after time. And then in essence, it allows progress reports. Now, one of the things that we are working on with data and AI is really to prompt that type of intervention that says, hey, you know, your other 15 classmates are at 70%, you know, you're slightly behind. If you put in another 2 hours for the next 3 days, you'll catch up. So it's all of those positive interventions. Liz, I love that. HE features double marking, moderation, anonymous marking, peer marking as well, Mr. Trace. I would say, because the call's being recorded, watch this space, but you will see some announcements coming out over the next few months around improvements around that type of functionality. But yeah, really good flags. Thank you. Jed, going back to your one, we use Google Data Studio integrated with the VLE. Oh, hang on, that's just clicked up then. Can you expand on the integration with MS Tools? Okay, so we have this platform called Open Education Analytics, and it runs on something called the Common Data Service. So it's effectively a really easy way of plugging data sets together to achieve an outcome and achieve dashboards. So in essence, you know, Michael, this might be another session as well. This might be a follow-up session. But in essence, if you just use Google and search for Open Education Analytics, it's on GitHub, it's open source, it's free of charge, and you effectively use it as the way of bringing data sets together to model out the dashboards that you want to deliver back to the business and back to lecturers and the institution as well. Okay. All right, let me look. Some apps would be really handy to embed in private channels. Oh, Scott, Private channels. Okay, lots of work going on around private channels. I think it's fair to say our roadmap is very aligned to usage, which for me is a chicken and egg discussion, because if we want people to use private channels, then we've got to have the features. But if people are not using private channels, then we don't develop the features. So it is a bit of a chicken and egg discussion. What we are seeing is much more investment in achieving parity across the three types. So private channels, normal channels, and then channels within teams. So yeah, I take that on board totally. Okay, good shout. How are we doing? Jed, thank you for publishing that. That's really useful. I can actually organize, I'm going to say private session. I can organize a private session with a lovely guy called Jason Morales, not the DJ, but Jason Morales over in the US could do a session late afternoon. I know he would jump at the chance to really give you a good deep dive into open education analytics. So, you know, that is an absolute sincere offer back from me to do that.
Fantastic. Lots of interest in the integrations across the board, particularly around some of the tools that we are already using in HE, and then these wider and open source platforms, which is great. Lynn has asked about insights and premium costs.
Lynn, very good question. What we are doing around the insights piece is starting to build more and more of it into the licensing models. So effectively, you know, if you think about our licensing, whether it's A3 licensing or A5 licensing, we've got probably over 50% of the sector on A5 licensing now. So they will have entitlement to premium insights. It can be a costed version for A3, or if it's something that's of value, then it's built into A5. What it does is it absolutely does not show private identifiable information. It does not show PII, I promise you that. What it does when it gets to manager level, it randomizes and anomalizes the data. And then when it gets to leadership insights, same thing. So the only person that can see your data about how long you're working, emails you're sending, chats you're doing, people you're engaging with is you. And I spend a lot of time reassuring academics about that. So, you know, I'm here if that type of discussion is needed, but that's what it does in essence.
Fantastic. Some challenging questions there, but I appreciate them coming up because I think it's a valuable conversation to have.
Well said.
Ian, if I can jump in, you had a slide at the start that was around HE challenges, and I'm pleased you went on to speak about staff well-being. I think that's really valuable. But what you didn't mention on there was staff digital capabilities and skills, particularly in an environment that is very rapidly updating and changing with good updates, but changes nonetheless. How do you see sort of supporting staff digital skills and their capabilities to utilize Microsoft tools to their best?
Oh, lovely. Right. Three things to talk about. The first one is that we reference back to the JISC Digital Capabilities Framework. I would say you probably know this anyway, but watch this space because they're just about to start doing an update to that, which is amazing. It was a great piece of first round work. The second piece is, I would say, please don't reinvent the wheel. So for instance, if you go into something like PowerPoint, there's a whole load of guides in there that you can use, you can leverage and make the most of. Definitely use YouTube and look for the Microsoft Educator channel. I would also say look for Microsoft Mechanics as a channel because there's a ton of information. Because what I do see a lot of is universities going, right, Microsoft have done this, we've got to make it ours and then publish it out. And I think that causes a lot of unnecessary pain when the skill sets of the people doing that could be freed up to do even better stuff. So I hope that comes across in the right way. The other side of it is, if you don't like something, please press the feedback icon and type it in there. I see a few angry stroke frustrated threads, and I get that. But if you can just tell us what you don't like, I promise you that it's all red. Okay, we actually have a team in Redmond who are collating that feedback and then discussing it with the product houses. If you don't like a feature, don't be afraid to tell us, but please do it in a constructive way, because we absolutely listen, and that's how a lot of the products get refined. So, Michael, just summarizing, JISC framework, our training materials, first off, just make it nice and easy, and then please provide feedback.
I think that's a great response, and I think, yes, you're right. We are sometimes guilty of that, trying to translate Microsoft sort of new content in that way. And do you think that then that Viva Learning will have an impact on that as well?
I think it's very candidly mindful. We're recording. I think we've got to get the price point right for Viva. We're getting a lot of feedback around what other vendors are doing. We're seeing a lot of universities seeing the value in Viva, especially with the free stuff, because you get all of the M365 training material, the Office training material, and then Microsoft Learn, as well as the 125 LinkedIn free courses. The step up to something that's paid is really venturing into LMS type of territory for internal institutions. If we then flip and look at students, then we've got Career Coach, which is a joint development with LinkedIn. And that's effectively helping students develop their soft skills. So I think we've got a really strong value proposition. Do I think it's perfectly priced based on the feedback that we're getting? Probably not, but we're all ears. So if people are interested, the one thing I'd ask you to always remember is that we are always ears and open to a discussion.
That's fantastic. So we are approaching the end of our session. We have just a couple of minutes left. If anyone gets a last minute question in now, I will allow it. And failing that, I will pose a last question to Ian. What's the one place, resource, link, hub that you would like staff to continue their development with Microsoft tools and their Microsoft journey?
Google Chrome. You're going to wonder why I said that. When I do a lot of customer meetings, I'm not the brainiest person on the planet by far. But what I do is I use the search engine to find the answer. And I think, we've got so many docs pages. So we've got service.microsoft, docs.microsoft, and then techcommunity.microsoft. There are so many ways that you can find information, but please just use a search engine. Don't try and find it on the Microsoft website, because you then get all of the little snippets from the other pages as well. So yeah, that would just be my one piece of advice for searching for stuff, because there's too much of it.